Hey guys, this is Miss Miklos with the Chapter 4 review. So, as we're going through this, I just want to let you know that this is a test that in some ways I think is the easiest test all year because I don't think the questions on the test are super tricky. They're extremely straightforward. There's not very many questions because they're time consuming. Yet, it can also be a difficult quiz because a difficult test because there are a lot of places where you can make mistakes if I don't check my work. Also, since there's not as many questions, that means if I mess up on something, each question is worth a larger percentage of the test grade. So, we're going to review solving by algebraic methods, specifically solving using linear combination, solving using Cramer's rule, evaluating determinants, and we will also go through a word problem. And these are really the only 4 things that you guys will see on this particular chapter test. So this is problem number 2 on the review worksheet. And looking at these, remember if I'm doing linear combination, I want to cancel out one of these 3 variables. I'm going to go ahead and cancel out the x's. The reason why I'm going to cancel out the x's is because I think they would be the easiest ones to get opposite coefficients. For example, I'm going to start with equations number 1 and number 3 because my x coefficients are already opposites. So when I add these together, my x's cancel out, and I get negative y plus z equals negative 2. Now I need to choose a combination of different equations. I could either use 1 and 2 or use 2 and 3. I'm going to use 2 and 3 because this one already has a negative, and I know I need these to be opposites. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply this whole equation, equation number 3, by a 4. Okay, and when I do this, I get negative 4x plus 4y minus 8z equals 20. So I'm going to go ahead and add these together now. My x's cancel, and I get 9y minus 7z equals 24. So now I have 2 equations that have the same 2 variables. So I'm going to go ahead and use these, and let me go ahead and rewrite them. So I'm going to go ahead and multiply this top equation by 7. I'm going to cancel out the z's, so I get negative 7y plus 7z equals negative 14. So when I add these together, I get 2y, my z's cancel, equals 10, so y is equal to 5. So now I'm going to substitute that back into one of these 2 equations. I'm going to use this first one, and I'm going to say negative, instead of y, I'm writing 5, plus z equals negative 2. So when I add 5 to both sides, I get z is equal to 3. Now I'm going to take these 2 values and substitute it into one of these 3 equations. Why don't we just use the first one? So I'm going to have x minus 2 times 5 plus 3 times 3 equals negative 7. So I get x minus 10 plus 9 equals negative 7. So x minus 1 equals negative 7. So x is equal to negative 6. So that's telling me my ordered pair here is negative 6, 5, 3. Let's double check if this works. I get negative 6 minus 10, which is negative 16, plus 9, which is negative 7. So I know that this equation works. Next, negative 24 plus 25 is 1. 1 plus 3 is 4, so that works. Lastly, I get positive 6 plus 5, which is 11. 11 minus 6 is 5, so that works as well. So my answer is negative 6, 5, 3. So next problem we're going to go ahead and do is number 4 on the review, and this is going to practice using Cramer's rule. So here's my first determinant, D. My first column are my x coefficients. Second column are the y coefficients. Third column are the z coefficients. Then I know I need to rewrite my first two columns again. So now we're going to go ahead and go through. 2 times 4 times 3 is 24. 3 times negative 1 times 3 is negative 9. 2 times 1 is 2. Now I'm going to subtract and work backwards. 3 times 1 times 3 is 9. 2 times negative 1 times 1 is negative 2. 2 times 4 times 3 becomes 24. So I end up getting 17 minus 31, which is equal to negative 14. So now I'm going to go ahead and find d sub x. This time, since it's sub x, I'm replacing this first column with our constants. Then I know once again I need to rewrite those first two columns out, and I'm ready to go. 1 times 4 times 3 is 12. 3 times negative 1 times 2 becomes positive 6. 2 times 7 times 1 is positive 14. Okay, then I'm subtracting. 3 times 7 times 3 is, let's see, 9 times 7 is 63. 1 times negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. 2 times 4 times negative 2 becomes negative 16. So I have 32 minus 46 equals negative 14. All of a sudden, I already know that my x value is going to be 1 because d sub x divided by d gives us a value of 1. My next determinant is determinant d sub y, so this time my y column is being replaced by my constants. And once again, I need to rewrite out those first two columns, and we're ready to go. So this time, 2 times 7 times 3 becomes 42. 1 times negative 1 times 3 becomes negative 3. 2 times 1 times negative 2 becomes negative 4. I know I need to subtract. 1 times 1 times 3 is 3. 2 times 1 times negative 2 becomes positive 4. 2 times 7 times 3 becomes 42. I get 35 minus 39 equals negative 14. Once again, d sub y divided by d gives us a value of 1. Last but not least, let's find d sub z. This time, since it's d sub z, I replaced my z column with my constants. And I know, once again, I need to go ahead and write out my first two columns again. So let's start. 2 times 4 times negative 2 becomes negative 16. 3 times 7 times 3 becomes plus 63. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. Then we are subtracting, working backwards. 3 times 1 times negative 2 becomes negative 6. 2 times 4 times 1 is 14. And 1 times 4 times 3 is 12. So I get 48 minus 20, which is 28. So let's think about this. 28 divided by negative 14 gives me negative 2. So I'm thinking this is my ordered triple. Let's do a check though. When I substitute into this first equation, 2 plus 3 is 5. 5 minus 4 is 1. 1 plus 4 is 5. 5 minus negative 2 is 7. And in my last equation, 3 plus 1 is 4. 4 minus 6 is negative 2. So I know that it works. I cannot stress how important it will be for you on this test to double check your work. Next concept I want to go through, we just did a ton of them, but there will be problems like this on your test where all we're doing is evaluating that 3 by 3. So I'm going to begin by rewriting the first two columns. And this particular problem should make us really happy because look at all those zeros. Let's go. 8 times 5 times negative 1 is negative 40. 0 times anything is 0. And my third column, I have 0 again, so I really did not have to think much. Working backwards, I get 0. Now I'm done with my zeros, so I need to multiply actually. 8 times 2 times 6 becomes 96. And then 1 times 5 times 4 becomes 20. So I have negative 40 minus 116. So I get negative 156 as my answer. Okay, last thing we're going to go through is number 9. We're going to go through this word problem. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to say x equals 3 pointers and y equals 2 pointers and z is equal to the free throws. So some things that are important here. 10 shots were made, so that tells me that x plus y plus z was equal to 10, because altogether they made 10 shots. 24 points were scored, so I know that's going to have to be 3x plus 2y plus z is equal to 24. My final one, it says there are as many 3-point shots as 2-pointers and free throws combined. So that's telling me x is equal to y plus z. So now I have 3 equations with 3 variables. I'm actually going to rewrite this equation here to be x minus y minus z equals 0. And I'm going to use a combination of stuff to go ahead and solve this. So I'm going to start by finding determinant d here. So 1 times 2 times negative 1 becomes negative 2. 1 times 1 times 1 is 1. 1 times 3 times negative 1 becomes negative 3. Then I know I'm subtracting. 1 times 3 times negative 1 is negative 3. 1 times 1 times negative 1 becomes negative 1. And 1 times 2 times 1 is 2. So I end up having, let's see, negative 4 minus negative 4 plus 2 is negative 2. Negative 4 plus 2 would become negative 2. So that would be my d value. Next I'm going to use d sub x. So I went ahead and replaced my first column with my constants. And here we go. 10 times 2 times negative 1 is negative 20. 1 times 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 24 times negative 1 is negative 24. Okay, minus 1 times 24 times negative 1 is negative 24. 10 times 1 times negative 1 becomes negative 10. And then I get plus 0. So when I combine these, I get negative 44 minus negative 34, which becomes negative 10. So what that tells me right away is that I have negative 10 divided by negative 2, which is 5. So that's telling me that we made 5 3-pointers. Okay, and I'm going to write out my answer better later. Next thing that I'm going to do here, I'm going to go ahead and find d sub y. Okay, so I'm going to do 1 times 24 times negative 1, which is negative 24. 10 times 1 times 1 is 10. And then I get 0 minus 10 times 3 times negative 1 is negative 30. 1 times 1 times 0 is 0. 1 times 24 times 1 is 24. So I have negative 14 minus negative 6, which ends up giving me 8. Negative 8. So we learned earlier that d was equal to negative 2. So I know negative 8 divided by negative 2. tells me that we made 4 2-pointers. Now, since this problem didn't tell me that I had to use a specific method, I'm actually going to stop using Cramer's rule here and substitute into one of these equations. I think the first one's the easiest. 5 plus 4 plus z equals 10. I get z is equal to 1, which tells me that I made 1 free throw. Now, let's double check and see if this makes sense. So, this is telling me that all those added together is 10, which is true. Okay, next one. 5 times 3 is 15, plus 4 times 2 is 8, which is 23, plus 1 is 24, so that works. Next one, 5 minus 4 minus 1 is 0. So I know that that does indeed work. I would say that the test question will be similar in difficulty to anything we've seen on our homework, anything we've seen on our review here. Okay, biggest thing, you guys, make sure that you take your time, check your work, remember your negatives when you use Cramer's rule, and I'm expecting a lot of great grades out of you guys for this chapter test.